A lesson that I learned from someone that was making or is making 400k per month. Okay, so last Sunday I had a meeting with our group that it's called the Insider, and on that group really is where we have a lot of high performing entrepreneurs, and I took like two main points from that group that I want to share with you today. The first one was the speech that I actually did to that group, and the second one was a lesson that I learned from someone that was making or is making 400k per month. Now, the 400k lesson, I know that you guys really want to get into it, but I'm going to do that in another video. Today I'm going to focus on the speech that I gave to that group. And the reason for that is because a few days ago I created a video that is on the basics of creating an online business, right? And I talked about the current situation that your client needs to have and what is the desired situation that they want to go. And one thing that I noticed is that a lot of people, right, when they are creating their business, right, especially I'm going to talk in terms of creating your online program, your online course. And the reason for that is, again, I've been helping people launch online courses for over 3 years now with my social media marketing agency. And one thing that I learned is that I have been reading a book that it's called The Anti-Fragile, right, by Nassim Taleb. And on that book, it allowed me to create a dictionary to actually explain things that before I didn't knew how to explain to people. And that thing is that you really have three types of people who create and launch courses, right? And who create online businesses, if you want to put that way. And the first one, actually, let me go back and explain to you. So Nassim Taleb, he talks about the idea of the anti-fragile. And what the anti-fragile is, for example, is if you have a glass of water, right, and you drop that glass, right, what happens to that glass? It breaks, right? And what is like the opposite of fragile? A lot of people think that the opposite of fragile is hard, right, or that is like robust, right? But saying that the opposite of fragile is hard or robust is the same thing as just saying that the opposite of positive is neutral, right? And in the dictionary, really, you don't have a word that describes the opposite of fragile. That Nassim Taleb, he talks about the idea that the opposite of fragile is actually anti-fragile. And the reason for that is that instead of the glass being harder, right, when you drop the glass, if the glass was anti-fragile, what will happen is it will get better, right, instead of breaking, or instead of just being hard overall. And the reason for that, and the idea that you need to think about that, is, for example, our own skin, right? If you cut your skin, I'm not talking about like cutting your hand off, but if you have like a cut, what will happen is you'll create a scar, and that scar, right, is a harder and thicker skin. So humans are anti-fragile, right? And for example, when you go to the gym and you are lifting weight, right, what happens is that you are literally breaking your muscle to build a stronger and better muscle on top. So humans are anti-fragile, and yet a lot of people they ignore that idea of the existence of having an anti-fragile. So what would happen if that glass drops? Instead of breaking, if the glass was anti-fragile, what will happen is that the glass will become more resistant, to the point that the more it goes down, right, it will get like to diamond, if diamond is more resistant to glass. And that is the main idea of being anti-fragile. And what I see happening online, and when you're creating an online business, is that a lot of people, right, they are fragile. And here's what happened. A lot of business, right, a lot of people, and I'm going to call them fragile, what happened is, so I'm going to put the hard and then a T from anti-fragile. So a lot of businesses, right, what happened is when they launch the course for the first time, right? And if they are unable to sell, what happens for the fragile people, right, for fragile business owners, is that they retreat back to what is comfortable, right? So they try to create their business, right? They try, and even, for example, not only in courses, for example, for a social media marketing agency, right? When I started, I'm going to give you my example. When I started, right, I wanted to find ways of getting clients without getting on calls, without getting on cold calls and so on. So I was going on the easier route, that is, for example, sending emails or creating LinkedIn outreach strategies, right? And they work, but if you get on a call with someone, if you create a value video, if you create, for example, an audit, right? If you record a video with an audit for that business and send to the business owner, call the business owner and say, look, I send you an audit, right? What happens is you're going to an uncomfortable position to actually grow that business. And in the beginning, for me, that was hard to do because I'm really an introvert. So talking to people on the phone, doing cold calls, for me, it's really hard, right? But for you to grow the business, you need to actually go to that level, right? To that jump. And what happens most of the time is once you have the first rejection, right, you retreat to basic, right? You retreat to what is fine. You retreat to sending cold emails and sending lumpy emails and connecting with people on LinkedIn and so on. So most people, when they're getting, for example, an online course and they fail to create, they blame on the course, they blame on the market, they blame that people don't have money to pay them, and really they build excuses on why it's not working, right? Instead of going back, evaluating their offer, evaluating the situation that their customer wants actually to get to, and then put that offer in front of the audience again. One exercise that I have all my clients do and all my students do is actually to go to market, right? And I'm going to have like a print, because I did that myself, I'm going to have a print passing here of when I wanted to create my own program, right? What I did was I actually asked the people what were the problems that they're facing, and I actually went like to blogs and read all the comments, and I did that for one entire week until I gathered enough data points, right, to actually create an offer that people could not refuse. Even though I already had experience selling online programs, right, I wanted to make sure of what I was doing. So I had a proof of concept, yet I put myself in a harder situation to actually get the best results possible. Now, what happens most of the time is that people, right, they manage to sell, for example, 1 or 2 programs, and they get to the hard stage, right? They get to the point where all of a sudden, right, this is their retreat to find. Here is where they are. Basically, it's like, okay, I can sell 1, I can sell 2, and that for me is fine. And people usually they don't break to this point because they're afraid to fail, right? They're afraid to, if I put more money in that product right here, I'm going to fail. And for you really to become anti-fragile to the point of no matter what you do, you keep improving, right? You need to put yourself up in there, right? You need to do the work. And really going like being on the hard, right? Because you went from the failed, right? You went from being like the fragile person that when you fail you retreat to find, when you fail you retreat to your previous position, and you get to that point, right, when you are being robust, right? What ends up happening is all of a sudden, right, you are afraid of going from this place to a better position, which makes you fragile again, and people fail. So I'm going to give you an example. When I launched my first Facebook ads, right, I was launching ads that were $400 per day, right? And $400 per day on Facebook for a lot of people is a lot of money. But the results that I was having, because I was competing on a market that is really saturated, and if you know how Facebook ads work, they are on a bidding system, right? For me to beat my competition, right, I increased that value even though like I knew that I would lose money, right? I increased that value to 2,500 per day, right? And I knew I would lose money. A lot of people, they're afraid in doing this transition, right? Especially because when you do this, right, either you are not in the right position to do that, or when you do this, right, you don't know what is going to happen. And a lot of people are afraid of the consequences of doing something like this, from going, for example, from 400 to 2,500 a day, right? Especially if in the 400 you didn't have like results, right? It's crazy to put 2,500 to actually see if you get results or not, right, per day. And what can happening is that when I did this, right, when I put the 2,500 per day, I all of a sudden became anti-fragile, because I was putting myself in a situation that most people consider it risky, right? But it made me better, because I actually was not only able to identify what was the problem with the $400 ad, but I was able to scale my ads into a point that I was getting the results that I wanted, that is calls, right? That it was having my agenda full. So to take that decision, right, so I'm going to explain a little bit better this. To take a decision on putting the money, right, or taking the money from my place that is already working, right, and putting that money to a place that you don't know where it goes, right, is a dumb move to do in business, right? For example, if you have a business that already generates you money, and the more money that you put in that business, more money it gives you, it's dumb to take that money that you have in the beginning that fuels you generating money and put, for example, that in real estate, especially if it's in the growing phase of the business, right? So for me, I really did that. I took the money from my place that I was already working and I put in a machine, right, that I wasn't sure if it would work or not. The results was that I was able to get the results that I wanted, but it's risky. And usually in business, people are afraid of taking risks. So when you build enough of the anti-fragile muscle, right, you can all of a sudden start to take more risks, right, without you even worrying about the consequences. Now, don't be dumb. The things, if you know what you're doing, do it, right? But it's important for you to really understand what is stepping you, like what is putting you back, right? Is for you to think about like what are the actions or what are the things that are triggering your brain to not actually take action and accomplish things. And most of the time is really because you are being fragile. It's really because you are afraid of the consequences that are going to happen. And most of the time what I see happening in business is that people know that their business is already flawed, right? They know that if they grow that business, they will going to grow a flawed machine. So, and what I say about that is, for example, a lot of people, they work countless hours in their business, right? They work what Elon Musk tells you to do, that is 80 hours per week in your business, and they know that if they boost that business up, the business will fail because they cannot dedicate more time to their business. So you need to think about how you can fix that first and then not be fragile and just boost things up, right? And really, the more you do something, the better you'll get. And that is how, like, that is what happens with everything in life, right? The first time that you went to ride a bicycle, it was not like the 10th time that you did it, right? So in business, you really need to step out of being fragile if you want to be successful, right? Step out of the comfort zone and do things. And again, you'll fail, but if you don't fail, right, you will not be able to learn what actually takes you to be successful. Because here's what happens most of the case. You go on a call, right, and the person tells you, look, so let's say I'm going to give you a really specific example, right? When I created my course, my own program, what will happen is I will get on calls with people, right? And I was doing the calls myself. I wasn't having my sales team on that. I will do the calls myself, and I will jump on the calls, right? And I had my offer, and my offer was that I was going to give the person every single tool that they needed to actually create a successful business, right? A successful online course. And in that, I would set the offer and so on. And the first time that I set the offer, the person on phone said, like, that is a really good offer, but it's so expensive for me, right? And I hang up the phone and I move on with my life. The second time that I did it, right, the person asked me if I had a installment plan. And I told him, yes, I do. And I gave him the installment plan. And he said, but I was looking in a way of, for example, you could take, for example, 5% of the business or 10% of the business, and I pay you this, and then you take like that, this 10% of the business, right? And then after like, I'm not even joking, after like 10 calls of just listening to the same complaints, right? For each call that I did, I was changing and iterating, right, the offer that I was going to present to the person, where I got to a point that the offer that I had for my program was so good that the person could not refuse, right? When I state the offer and what I actually offer to that person inside of my program, first, it's something that is not like something that you see online every day, and second, it was an offer so good for the same price. Actually, like, it was the same price. For production of the course, I keep paying the same price for the production, that it is near zero. And like, the way that I presented the offer, from listening to the fails, from listening to the no's, allowed me to actually sell the course better, right? And that is what people are afraid to do. Is like, it's like after you hear like 20 no's on a call, you get like devastated. You go like, what am I doing here? Like, what? Like, am I even good? Like, and like, you need to get an idea that, for example, when I jump on a call for my social media marketing agency, right, most of the time, our clients that they already know about us, our clients that really, they see the clients that we work with, and they jump on a call, and it's really easy to sell them. It's just like, look, here's like the credit card information that you need to put in, and that's it, right? And in the beginning, like, selling the course now was like the beginning of creating my social media marketing agency, where it was just like the grind, right? And all of a sudden, I started creating these doubts in my head. Is like, am I even good at what I'm doing, right? And when you are in that position and you iterate your offer every single time that you hear a no, to the point that people just say like, okay, let's do this, right? Then is when you are actually evolving. So again, it brings us to the same lesson. The more you do something, right, the better you will become at whatever it is that you're doing. So if you fail, go back and do it again, right? If you fail, go back and do it again. And that is basically the offer. That is basically the way that you can create your offer. And the video that I have for you today is really just get out of this fragile mindset, because you can take a beat. I guarantee you, like, you in business, you can take a beat, and more like, and it's important for you to know that you'll listen to more no's than yeses anyway. And the worst that can happen is you hear a no, right? You go with your feeling, like, you feel down for a while, you go back on a call, you hear a yes, and you are excited again to do everything over again. So go out of the anti-fragile, right? Actually go and do sales calls, right? Go and cold call people, right? Right now, I have a list right in front of me here on my computer, right? I'm looking at it right now, of business that I'm going to cold call them, because I know that my product can help them, right? So even now, like, I still do like cold calls, right? So you need to go out of this zone right here. And if you want to succeed in business, first you need to stop caring about what people think about you, and second, this is not personal. So break out of fragile, become anti-fragile, and you're ready to go. You're really set for success. And that is basically it for today's video, and I'll see you next week. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much indeed, and bye. And you get to do hard, right? To being hard, actually, being hard. And you get to that point, right? When you